Yeah, I thought the third band was the second band for a while. And I figured that out, second band played first week was a nice assistant director did that. You did third band and first band and first.
Ready to
Maybe both big bands. If they're two jazz ensembles. Nice bass drum now. Okay, look, all the fundamental stuff is fine. Let me ask you about the fermata near the end. Percussion sustained through your release there.
Yeah.
Did you intend that?
No.
Is that what's written?
Well, there's nothing, I don't think it says to sustain anywhere. So like if I release, then.
So what do you mean? We're talking about measure 21, right?
Yeah.
So you said, I don't think it says to sustain anywhere?
Well, because there's a fermata over everybody's like second beat. So if I release, I guess people are probably just used to sustain for it, like.
Well, at least one person. Which isn't incorrect necessarily, right?
Yeah.
But what do you want?
I just wanted it all to release.
So chastise the snare drum, right? Or give more clarity to that release.
Yeah.
Everybody understand what you're saying? You know, there's common practice where, yes, you can sustain that through color and then do anything wrong. I mean, lots of times that's the way you do it. But you also start lots of times with that snare drum. And we're not doing that this time. I can't tell you how many different places I've been. You start the national anthem by playing the pickup to two before the end. You say, yum bum 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 be yum bum bum. That's a cheat to give the singer a chance to be in the right key. You know? So if you ever get in that position, you can remember that little trick. You play just that tiny little bit, it gives you, if you have a vocalist, it gives them a pitch, gives them a range. So that's something to consider there. In the beginning, are there any phrases to this at all? First section, there's 8 bars, right?
I guess it's just one phrase.
It's an 8-bar phrase?
I guess.
You guess.
Well, that's
Come
why,
on. Don't.
that's what I see it as. Like it's going to the end of the bar.
So it's one arch. Okay. Does everybody agree with that? It's okay if you do, it's okay if you don't.
No.
Some people don't. So I suppose you don't, why not? What do you think?
I think it's a 4-bar phrase. Or 4 2-bar phrases, I'm sorry.
4 2-bar phrases.
That's kind of how I hear it, at least.
Okay. What supports that notion?
It's 4 repeated rhythmic patterns
Sure. It's similar.
with a different melodic line, or it's similar, it's just a little bit altered. Yeah.
Agreed.
The pickup,
Think simpler, a little more obvious.
2 4-bar phrases.
Let's just stick with that. We'll get to that in just a second. But let's stick with this 4 2-bar phrases. Think about the words.
There's comments.
Right, those, I think if this was poetry, those would probably be individual lines, right? The "Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light, so proudly we hailed," whatever those words are. I would be one of those people, by the way. You see those things where at like sports events where they forget the words? Those poor people that have to sing the national anthem and then they blow it, and they start mumbling in the middle, or they sing the wrong place in the wrong. I have a great empathy for those people. I would do that. And I don't know how many millions of times I first started singing there, but I was like, I can imagine how that happens to somebody who just sing, "Oh, say, can you see?" And the rocket's red glare. So I think it's unusual that we got a 2-bar phrase. Just in Western music, right? I mean, that's kind of unusual to have a 6-beat something. It's kind of small, but I think there is some rationale for that. If one were to say, maybe there's commas, if it were written, it might be written with a new line in each spot. So let's talk about 2 4-bar phrases though. So how do you justify that?
At the cadence at the 4th bar.
Yeah.
is
Check out the
what
first
it is.
pitch and then the downbeat of the 4th bar. In the melody, it's the same note. Sometimes those are clues that we have a, cadence point, like she said, or we have a starting and a pausing point. Yum, ba bum 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 bim. Yum ba bee ba bum bum yum ba bum 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 bum. There's a, that's a half cadence in the 4th bar, isn't it? I think so. Been a long time for theory for me too. I wouldn't bet the mortgage that it's exactly a half cadence, but it's certainly not a final. Doesn't sound final. It sounds like a resting place. Beat bar 2 and bar 6 feel kind of dominant, don't they? Beat da dum 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 dee. That needs to resolve someplace. That's a 5 or a 7 kind of thing. Yum bum 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 bum. That sounds more stable. Leaving my house, going outside. Anybody with the Stewart song with the guitar? If we go to the E minor, sorry, I love that. So that 4th bar is kind of, but it's not really the ending. E happy. We can end there. I think 8's a pretty hard sell. I think 1. Now, what's one last little thing we can talk about before we move on? We can do this all day, but let's move on after one more clue as to what we might do. Anybody? Deep da dum dum dum. What happens?
thank you.
Boom, crash. Another hint here, a lot of times, especially the non-pitch percussion, sometimes in any music, the pitch percussion is doubling melodies, it's doubling harmonies, perhaps giving fronts to some things. The non-pitch percussions, composers give away their stuff sometimes with that. I've found over the years, if you're in a bind, you're trying to decipher whether something should be this or something should be that. Many times the non-pitch percussion, we're talking about stuff with heads, it's non-pitch percussion for the most part. He or she, the composer, can give away some things that they're thinking by what they use to punctuate in non-pitch percussion. So, yup a bum 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 boom crash, yup a bum 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 boom crash, yup a bum 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 boom crash. Is that right? Yes. For some reason I can't find a bass drum.
It's not on there.
Oh, that's why I can't find it. That's a good reason. So what's interesting about this is, where's the only spot where there's not a boom crash? Yeah, the first ending and the second ending. So we did something different. So where are you now? You still with 8? It's okay. I don't think 8, 4, 2, you can't be like wrong unless you said, you know, why, and you went, I don't know. Whatever one of these rationales resonates with you as a musician is your correct answer. And your correct answer doesn't have to be anybody else's correct answer. So after this hullabaloo about it, where are you right now?
I still see it as 8.
You still see it as 8?
Yeah.
Okay, let's deal with that. 8's counterintuitive. Okay? Yum, bum, beam, bum. Who's writing about the first suite down here? Somebody's got. Just,
Oh, that's me.
okay. Or was this not you writing? Yeah.
Oh, that was me, right?
Yeah. Okay. What are you writing about here? You're writing a Jelly Roll Morton and then the first suite?
Yeah, I have another page, but I didn't read it on the cover sheet. It's from my music history.
Yeah?
Today.
You're gonna tie those two together?
Well, yeah, it's kind of random because you have to like,
A little bit.
yeah.
I wanna see you pull that off. I'm curious, how's the maple leaf rag connected to the first suite?
Oh, no. I'm comparing like different styles, so I have to compare, vernacular music, so I did rags, jazz, and then bands.
Ah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yum bum beam bum yum bum bum bum. Breathe or don't breathe. Yum bum 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 bum. Here's the tricky part about that. Holst put 2 arches in it. In the score, and in the 2 lead phony parts, yum bum be bum 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 bum. And there's an end of that arch. And then there's a new arch. Boom, 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 boom. So people have debated that since about 5 seconds after he did it. Do you really mean that? Really mean take that breath every single time? What are you guys gonna do? You're gonna ignore Holst's indications?
You can still make it phrasing without having them breathe.
Okay.
I say no breath.
8 bars.
If they can do it. Now,
Ooh, that's a great
if
topic.
it means the end of every phrase is going to sound like, you know, like die off and be unsupported toward the end of the phrase, then they're gonna have, if they're gonna breathe, that's the place they have to breathe. But they have to breathe quickly and musically.
Trying as hard as I can to fight the possibility that this sounds like I'm saying I know everything, because I'm not. Let's table that discussion. Should we make decisions one way or the other based on whether the ensemble can do it or not? You know?
Unless that factored into why he wrote it that way.
And if he did, what?
Like if he thought, I'd like this to actually be a long phrase, but I know that they can't make it, so I'm gonna write too many phrases.
Think that's possible?
Sure, lots of composers have written things that they didn't wanna write because they didn't think their players were capable of it.
Name me one.
Anybody before the time of Berlioz.
Say what?
Musicians didn't practice before Berlioz. Berlioz was the one that walked in and forced his orchestra to practice, and that upped the level, and then people started writing harder and harder things.
Okay, the broad strokes of that is true, I just don't know how you extrapolate that to mean that every composer before then only wrote not what they wanted, but what they thought the players could do.
I don't know that they did, but I'm just putting it out there as a possibility.
Okay, all right, sounds like you said it was a fact, not a
Oh,
possibility.
no, just as a what if.
I think it's certainly a possibility, but I'd be fascinated to know what composer. Yeah. I just know too many examples of composers that could give a rat's tail whether or not you can do it.
Yeah, now for sure, but
I don't think Beethoven considered that either. I don't think he cared whether or not what he's asking people to do is hard. Relax, you know, giggling. Again, not that I'm saying I know. This is, I think, the fascinating stuff. Dr. Steele takes the tempo pretty bright to make sure that the 8 bars can happen. Because we get into a real conundrum with this because we do the whole suite on a 1 on a part. And now what?
Well, it's easier to do on some instruments than others, to make that 8-bar phrase.
Yeah.
Probably a lot easier on when clarinets have it than the
Yeah.
horn solo
Yeah.
and the high
You
range.
know, let's just stick with the first 8 bars, you know. The instruments that he gave it to, it's not easy to do, depending on how quickly you move the tempo.
But then a lot of people have them stagger breathe as well.
Now, what's fascinating, and then I'll leave this alone, you guys, because I'm sorry, it's like the three of us are now having a private conversation. But we're gonna be done. Consider all of that, and I agree. You know the time when he puts it in inversion. You still take it 8 bars there? Nobody else does. I bet you don't.
That part?
Yep.
Well, when I played it, I did.
You're more thoughtful than most people, but
Yeah, I don't know about that.
it's the inversion and stuff. That's a good point.
And go back and dig around your recordings, you're gonna find. Point for you is, of course, if we're gonna get that done, they all said 8 bars. I agree with 8 bars. You stand up in front of a group and you get 8 bars out of that whole first suite, you better be prepared to bring every bit of influence that you possibly can to that half note before the beat 3 in that bar. Because every young player in the world that sees that the first time, those 2 beat volumes, they're like ingrained in their DNA to take a breath after that happens. So, it applies here to you, 8 bars is a tough sell. So you're gonna have to do something in that 4th bar to reinforce that you got an 8-bar arch here. The time before, you pretty much just kept time. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you do that showed your 8-bar phrase?
I kind of sped up on accident, but I guess tried to crescendo through it in the 4th bar.
Okay, when you watch a video, you be the judge, I suppose.
Okay.
See if that came across.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Sarah, you conducted?